This video is how to create your own stamp using blocks at the print center and foamy shapes. There's large wooden blocks that you can make large stamps out of. There's also some small ones to make mini stamps. There's also a couple different shapes you can use. There's like circles. This would be good to make a circle stamp. You'd use the flat side. Look for some other shapes. This would make a long rectangular one. If you want to use one of the square blocks, but you don't want a square stamp, you could actually make your stamp on the side of the block to make it a rectangle. I already started my stamp. I cut foamy shapes, which are those little flat, somewhat 3D. They're kind of a little bit in relief. You can cut these into shapes or lines or different designs, and then we're going to place them on our block. So I already actually started designing this one. Alright, to actually glue them down, you're going to use the Elmer's washable glue, and instead of putting the glue on the shape, because that gets kind of sticky, we're going to put the glue in a thin little bead of line on top of the block, and then you can place them down. Don't worry if the glue seeps out. You just want to make sure your shapes are all kind of laying flat, that they're all on the stamp, and that there's no glue on top. You cannot layer your shapes, so I couldn't do a shape like this. A stamp has to all be one layer, and this shape is sitting on top. So you'd have to either cut that up or fit it somewhere in between these a little bit. But sometimes it's nice to have space in between your shapes. Having that wood block space show is really what's going to give that stamp, its character, and it's going to help you see the lines and what's in the stamp. Alright, this is a stamp I've already printed with. You can see this is what you don't want your stamp to look like once you start printing. So I'm going to check and make sure there's enough ink in this ink pad. I'm going to press it down at least 3 times. And I can see that's pretty well inked. Everything's covered nicely. You can decide how you're going to print it. You could combine this kind of printing with something else like mono printing or silk screen. Or you could paint a paper or do chalk on a paper. There's so many ways you can do it. But mine's a little plain with just a plain background. Okay, but I'm going to ink my stamp. I'm going to do a rhythm. So I'm going to line it up with that edge. And then I'm going to push down. And then I lift it up. And that's a pretty good stamp. I think when I put it in my stamp pad, I might even try rolling it a little bit instead of going straight up. It's kind of going in like a wave, but still pressing down to get a little bit more ink to cover that. I'm going to do a rhythm by turning my stamp this time, lining it up with the edge, kind of hovering above it, and then pressing it down. You want to press straight down. Sometimes giving it a little bit of a wiggle will help too. Again, 3 times I'll ink my stamp, line it up, and press it down. And I could finish that row. Maybe I'll do a square picture. So I'm going to start my next row. And don't worry if you print all the way off the page. If you wanted your paper to go all the way off the page, that would work too. And I could even print maybe a different color on top of this. I could turn it a little bit different. There's so many ways I can do it. But I probably finished printing at least the whole paper, so I'm using most of my picture space.